Shalom and Privet. This is Todd Chopper. I have Treason Encouragement. I came across a video early this morning I wanted to share with you, and it's very disturbing. It has to do with the Wagner group that fought in Bakhmut a few weeks ago. It was a very intense battle. The Wagner group is a group of missionaries that the Russian government used to fight at Bakhmut in Ukraine. Bakhmut is a strategic place that was very important to the Russians. Whoever won that region, it was an open road all the way to Kiev. And a lot of lives are lost. And I remember watching a video where the commander of the Wagner group, I can't pronounce his name, I apologize, he was complaining to the Russian government about how many of his men were lost. And he was saying, you're not sending enough ammunition, or we're going to pull out. One thing I learned, biblically speaking, in the Bible talks about putting on the whole armor of God. It talks about that we got to remember we're not fighting against people, we're fighting against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. We got to always remember that. But it seems like this dude wasn't thinking right. There was just something about this Wagner guy and his mercenaries I just didn't trust. And mercenaries can be bought and paid off by any group, and they can cause a mutiny and rise against their fellow government or their brothers and sisters. And it's very important to realize this because in the Bible, Yeshua, Jesus Christos, said that father will rise against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against daughter-in-law. Those of your own household will be your enemies. It's very important to always, and this is what I teach my children, watch your surroundings and watch your back. And President Putin is giving a speech in Moscow right now about the Wagner group that rebelled and caused a mutiny. The head commander-chief of the Wagner group, he has caused a lot of the Russian forces to surrender to him. They are on their way to Moscow, and they're probably 6 hours away and not showing any resistance, but it showed one clip where Russia has counterattacked and blown up one of their convoys. To me, either this mercenary, the Wagner group, was paid off, which I'm not really surprised. It could have been planned the whole entire time, is paid and bought off. But if you want my honest opinion about the Wagner group, they have now become Benedict Arnold. If you read American history, in the Revolutionary War, Benedict Arnold kept getting passed up promotion. And so he turned against the American Revolution and took the British side. There are statues of our forefathers of the Revolutionary War, and there's a statue of Benedict Arnold, but the only statue of him is of his boots, and that's it, from what I remember as a child growing up. So Wagner is kind of like a Benedict Arnold. He's turned against his country, he's turned against President Putin, and now he's on his way to Moscow to try to start a coup. And starting a coup and starting a civil war is not the answer. To have Russia fight against Russia, there is going to be an insurrection, there's going to be a civil war, and innocent lives always get caught in the middle of it. So I wanted to share this video with you and Putin's response to this insurrection, which I believe is not going to last too long, because last time I saw this happen was when the Russian Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 and became the Russian Federation. And that's when Boris Yeltsin took over. As soon as he took over, some of the Soviet republics broke off. And then in 1999, it got really bad where the economy was stagnating. Western influence was getting inside of Russia. And then there came the Chechnya War. I really urge you to study the Chechnya War of 1999 and how when President Putin finally took over, he turned everything around. This man, I believe, all he wants to do is just protect the sovereignty of Russia, protect his people, protect the economy at all costs, protect the Constitution, and bring justice to these mercenaries that have now turned into criminals. So here's what he has to say.
Обращаюсь к гражданам России, к личному составу вооруженных сил, правоохранительных органов и специальных служб, бойцам и командирам, которые сейчас сражаются на своих боевых позициях, отбивают атаки противника. Делают это героически. Знаю, сегодня еще раз ночью говорил с командующими всех направлений. Обращаюсь и к тем, кого обманом или угрозами втянули в преступную авантюру, толкнули на путь тяжкого преступления, вооруженного мятежа. Россия сегодня ведет тяжелейшую борьбу за свое будущее, отражает агрессию неонацистов и их хозяев. Против нас направлена фактически вся военная, экономическая, информационная машина Запада. Мы боремся за жизнь и безопасность наших людей, за наш суверенитет и независимость, за право быть и оставаться Россией, государством с тысячелетней историей. Эта битва, когда решается судьба нашего народа, требует единения всех сил, единства, консолидации и ответственности, когда в сторону должно быть отброшено все, что ослабляет нас. Любые распри, которыми могут воспользоваться и пользуются наши внешние враги, чтобы подорвать нас изнутри. Потому действия, которые раскалывают наше единство, это, по сути, отступничество от своего народа, от боевых товарищей.
I want to stop right there. President Putin is talking about betrayal. I'm sure his heart is broken that to see Russians betray the nation of Russia, to see Russian fight against Russian, it's unacceptable. It would be like as a father of two children, having your own son turn against you. And if you remember the story of Absalom turned against King David, his father, and tried to form a rebellion in the Bible. I urge you to read that story in the book of, I think it's the 1st or 2nd Samuel. And it greatly grieved King David, and his war advisors like Abner and some of his other captains of his army of Israel had to fight against Absalom until they finally subdued him and took him out. And I just see right here what Putin is saying. I see a repeat of history. I'm not trying to prophesy or predict anything. I just go by my gut feeling. This Wagner group, I think, is just a distraction, and I don't believe it's going to last. I'd be shocked if it did. I'd be really shocked because Russia has the resources. Let's continue.
Которые сражаются сейчас на фронте. Это удар в спину нашей стране и нашему народу. Именно такой удар был нанесен по России в 1917 году, когда страна вела Первую мировую войну. Но победу у нее украли. Интриги, склоки, политиканство за спиной армии и народа обернулись величайшим потрясением, разрушением армии и распадом государства, утратой громадных территорий. В итоге трагедии гражданской войны. Русские убивали русских, братья братьев. А корыстную выгоду извлекали разного рода политические авантюристы, да зарубежные силы, которые делили страну, рвали ее на части. Мы не дадим этому повториться. Защитим и наш.
I want to stop right there. Vladimir Putin is not stupid. He's a very smart, intelligent man. He knows his history. Whatever country you're raised in, it's very important to study the history of your country. And if you study Russian history, it was in 1914 through 1918 was the First World War that broke out, and Russia got drawn into it. It was a very, very huge fight. And the way he was talking about it, that the Russians had their victory stolen from them because of an insurrection that happened from within, which he uses the word 1917. That was the Bolsheviks, the Bolshevik revolution that rose against Russia and got the people to take their side. And then you had the creation of the Soviet Union and the Communist Party. So it was a huge blow. So Putin is reminding the people of Russia that era that happened in history and saying we will not let that happen again. This is why it's so important to teach history in the schools, to teach the education of school. History is so important to teach to our children and our future generations. If we don't teach the failures and success of our country and the economy, politics, what happens in our country, what makes a country great, what makes a country fall and rise, then we'll have a repeat of what Putman just talked about. Another civil war, victory being stolen from us, and devastation and division. Remember what Jesus said. He said, a house divided against itself shall not stand. We cannot live for the Lord and live for the devil. We cannot be on the side of one nation and be on the opposing side for another nation. We have to make up our mind. Which side are we going to choose? And I ask you this, dear brother and sister, whose side are you going to choose in these last days? It's very important to be on the winning side. Remember, God is the majority. He is the majority, and that's the side I pray that we all be on, because in these last days, it's going to get darker and darker, but greater is He that is in you and me than he that is in the world. We must let our light shine. We must pray for the people of Russia. We must pray for Vladimir Putin. I had a friend of mine who told me that a young lady had a dream about Vladimir Putin. And in the dream, he came up to her and said, please pray for me. That is a vision right there, an open vision from the Lord. It's very important to pray for our leaders and those that are in control, to even pray not only for our nation, but to pray for other nations so that we would have peaceful relationships. Let's continue.
Народ и нашу государственность от любых угроз, в том числе от внутреннего предательства. А то, с чем мы столкнулись, это именно предательство. Непомерные амбиции и личные интересы привели к измене. К измене и своей стране, и своему народу, и тому делу, за которое бок о бок с другими нашими частями и подразделениями сражались и погибали бойцы и командиры группы «Вагнер». Герои, которые освобождали Солидар и Артемовск, города и поселки Донбасса, сражались и отдавали свои жизни за Новороссию, за единство русского мира. Их имя и славу тоже предали те, кто пытается организовать мятеж, толкает страну к анархии и братоубийству, к поражению в конечном итоге и к капитуляции. Повторю, любая внутренняя смута – смертельная угроза для нашей государственности, для нас, как нации. Это удар по России, по нашему народу. И наши действия по защите Отечества от такой угрозы будут жесткие. Все, кто сознательно встал на путь предательства, кто готовил вооруженный мятеж, встал на путь шантажа и террористических методов, понесут неминуемое наказание. Ответят и перед законом, и перед нашим народом. Вооруженные силы и другие государственные органы получили необходимые приказы. Дополнительные меры антитеррористического характера вводятся сейчас в Москве, Московской области, ряде других регионов. Будут также предприняты решительные действия по стабилизации ситуации в Ростове-на-Дону. Она остается сложной. Фактически заблокирована работа органов гражданского и военного управления. Как президент России и верховный главнокомандующий, как гражданин России сделаю все, чтобы отстоять страну, защитить конституционный строй, жизни и безопасности, свободу граждан. Тот, кто организовал и готовил военный мятеж, кто поднял оружие на боевых товарищей, предали Россию и ответят за это. А тех, кого пытаются втянуть в это преступление, призываю не совершать роковую и трагическую, неповторимую ошибку. Сделать единственно правильный выбор. Прекратить участие в преступных действиях. Верю, что мы сбережем и отстоим то, что дорого и свято для нас. И вместе с нашей Родиной мы одолеем любые испытания. Станем еще сильнее.
NATO arming Ukraine and the United. So here you have it. There you have it. Vladimir Putin's speech. And It just really breaks my heart. If only our president of the United States would speak boldly, defend the law, defend the Constitution, uphold the people, protect the borders at all costs. That's the job of a leader. But in our country, our president, vice president is not even doing any of that. None of that at all. And I ask you, just pray for Russia, pray for Ukraine, pray against this insurrection that's going on. Pray that this Wagner group would stop and that they would surrender. And I pray for these Russian soldiers that took their side, that they would get out of there. They'd say, hey, we don't want to have nothing to do with you. Because once they participate in that, you're marked. You're marked. And criminal activities will come. So God has laid it in my heart to continually pray for Russia. And I will not stop. I will not stop. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Whenever you get a chance, please click the like button and subscribe. And I will continue to do future videos on Russia, the Russian people, the culture of Russia. I will talk about the history of Russia, how the Word of God is tied to it, and I want to talk about other nations as well. Hopefully I'll get a chance to do a video on Ukraine, about their patches and flags and symbols, how they're tied to the Nazi ideology. And hopefully I can talk about Stefan Bandera, but this came up and I just had to report on this. But thank you so much. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And as always, shalom and do svidaniya.